I started out by finding my favorite gorilla picture on Google Images. If you look closely, you can see that the monkey's face is facing completely forward, so I decided to find a picture of Lewin on Facebook that is also facing completely forward in the same orientation. This looks like a good one. I copy-paste the image into the file. It's a little big, so I shrink it down until it's a size that I can work with. Next, we need to cut out the part of Allie's face that we want to use for our project. So the tool that you'll want to use here is the quick selection tool right here. So you want to use that. And if that gets too messy, underneath that is the selection brush tool, which lets you select by yourself. This one selects based on similar colors, so it typically works pretty well. So I have it at a pretty small brush size, that way it's more specific. You just hold the mouse down and drag it across the parts that you want, and see, it gets it easily. Now, if you have a problem with that, you can choose this one, the selection brush tool. It lets you do it manually. So say I wanted a little more skin up here or something, it won't grab the pixels for me. I actually have to draw in what I want. So if I wanted like a little more hair up there or something, but I don't, so I could just undo that. And I'm just gonna copy that and paste it into a new layer and delete the old layer. Next, intuitively, I take the image, it's a different layer than the gorilla, so you can move it independently, and I shrink it to the size I want it. And then after that, I'll want to do something like this. You know, this face is not the right color, it doesn't exactly blend into the gorilla. So to change the color, you go into Enhance, Adjust Color, and then Adjust Hue/Saturation. That's one that I like to play with first. The hue, if you adjust the hue, that makes it a different color, straight up color like that. And we don't really want to do that exactly, so I'll put it back down to 0. If you adjust the saturation, that just shows like how much of that color it is. So like if you do that, you know, before it was like a little orange, now it's really orange. If you do it down here, it's completely black and white. And I guess we want it sort of in the middle like that, I'm guessing. And the lightness shows how light or dark it is. So that's if you add a bunch of darkness, like the color black to it. That way is if you add the color white to it. So I assume we'll want it to be sort of dark, but not completely dark. We may want to adjust the color some other way, maybe by adjusting the lighting. And when you adjust the lighting, you can do, I usually like to adjust the brightness and contrast. So brightness makes it more bright, makes it more dark. Brightness, I'm not sure. I like it bright. Contrast, oh yeah, that looks nice with a little extra contrast. So what I would do is I would play around with the different color techniques until I find the exact color that works for me. So you can see that this head doesn't really completely blend into the gorilla. You can tell it's photoshopped pretty easily, so there are a couple things we can do about that. I'm going to start first by using the eraser tool. I'll want it probably on the blurry kind, so, and yeah, about size 27 for now. And I don't want it completely opaque because I want to erase it partially, but not completely. So I'm going to put it on 50% here, so it's sort of transparently erasing. So it's partially erasing, oops, I didn't mean to do that, but you can just like start erasing part of the head so it starts to blend in a bit more. Like, that's not good. But, you know, you could play around with that technique. I'll probably do a bit more. Make sure that the correct layer is selected that you want to be working on. If I selected that layer, it would erase the monkey background. So I'm going to do a little bit more of this off camera. A tool that's definitely worth knowing how to use is the clone stamp tool right here. You can use this to copy a piece of an image and then have it paste right next door. So I'll show you an example. If I want to copy this, say I wanted to copy this piece of grass and have it cover a little more rock, say that was my goal, I would take this, I would make sure the correct layer is selected. We want to do it on the background layer. I would take this, click the Alt button on my computer. So I clicked and pressed Alt at the same time, and then see, you can make the grass go more places because it's copying that select part of pixels. So we want to use the same tool. I noticed that this monkey, this gorilla, underneath his face, some of the features of the gorilla are popping out through Allie's face, like the eyebrows look bad, some cheeks here. We want it to all kind of just blend in, so I'm going to take this part of the gorilla, I want to just blend it all down here so it all blends in, and I'm going to do that off camera. So I did that, and I also edited the color of her face a little more with the brightness and the hue/saturation tool, and I think it's looking pretty good at this point. So the next thing I'll do, I guess, I think I'll put some kind of different kind of feet on this gorilla. You can see the feet. So I'm looking on Google for duck feet. This might take a while. I'm trying to find something that has sort of a thickish top, because as you might remember, the gorilla had a pretty thick leg compared to a duck, so it's just an easier place to start with. I'll try this one. So you copy it and you paste it in. It's a new layer. You know very well about this. I told you about the brushes that you can choose, and this orange color is pretty different from the backgrounds, so we won't have too much trouble selecting the pixels with this because it selects based on similar color. So I'm just going to select these real quick, and that looks about right, and copy paste them into a new layer. Delete the old layer, we don't need that, and there it is, just sitting there. We can get each leg individually. I selected one of the legs and I'm gonna move it away from the other. In order to do that, I click this button here, the move tool, and I can do that. And to make it even more easy, I think I'm gonna cut and paste that part as a new layer. So now I have these two separate foot layers to work with. So I figured we could work on this bottom foot first, and I put it where I think I wanted it, where I thought it looked good. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this clone tool that we've used before, the clone stamp tool. I want to copy this and I want to move it to be thicker. I want to make this a thick image so it covers up the whole leg. And I'm going to do that on my own. Along with that, I may do some other things, so I'll let you know what I did after I do it. So yeah, I used a few tools, mostly that clone stamp tool. I also used how I showed you how I select and then move things. I also stretched parts of it. So I just played around there. It was a little tricky, but I got it to look like sort of a duck foot boot. Now, I'm gonna copy paste a little piece of that just to put behind here. I'll show you how to put a layer behind another layer. That's pretty important. So I decided for that, I'm just going to take this one since it's the least tampered with. I'm going to take this one, and over here in the layer section, I'm going to duplicate layer. Duplicate the layer. I'm going to take the new layer of that, and I'm probably going to want it like somewhere like that, but it's going to be, it can't be above the gorilla. That's odd. It has to be behind that other foot. So what I do is you drag the layer, you drag it underneath. You can see that layer 5, it's showing a picture of the layer of that altered foot that I did, the bottom foot. I want to put it below that. And once I do that, it puts it below it there. And then once I do that, I think I should probably just maybe erase the parts I don't want of it. That seems like the simplest part for that. There we go. I just erased it. So now for this foot, we want it to be behind that grass. It would look pretty awkward if it was above the grass because, oops, the gorilla is behind the grass. But we want it to be in front of this rock because that's how the gorilla is supposed to be. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the original layer of the gorilla, and I'm going to select the grass much as if I would select anything else using the, the selecting brush tool, that thing. And it's going to be a little trickier since grass is pretty, thin and stuff. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to make it its own layer, and I'll show you once I do that. So I just wanted to point out, I've selected most of the grass, but there are, right now I'm not finished, and there are parts of the gorilla that are in there. There's a way up here. This is the plus. This is if you want to select something to be a part of your selection, and here's the minus. I know it's blurry, you can't really see, but this is if you want something to be, like, not part of your selection anymore. So if I use that minus brush and I go into the black part, like, it deletes that from the selection. So I'm going to do a lot of that type of stuff so I can make sure to get each individual grass grain. And then I'm going to copy that grass and paste it, make it a new layer. So now this is a new layer, like I can move it if I wanted and stuff. And I want it to be above that foot. So I'll move the layer of the foot. I don't know if you can see, I'm moving the layer of the foot behind the layer of the grass. So now if I move the foot, it'll go behind the grass. So I'm using this selection tool, and then I use the move tool so I can stretch out this piece of foot. And then I'm going to use this tool also to, you know, the clone tool to edit it. And also there's this blur tool that I didn't tell you about yet, where you can just blur pieces together. So say I didn't like this dark piece of leg, I could blur it away, sort of like I could blur it in, blend it. Like, I don't really care about that, so I'm going to leave it, but I could if I wanted. So I'm just going to edit that off camera. So that looks pretty nice, and now I'm just going to use that same clone stamp tool to put a little part of a leg on this leg. I realized I hadn't done that, so I guess I'll take it from this one. I have to click and press Alt at the same time, so, and I'll just show you how I'm doing it a little. I just clicked it, and then I click, 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 and it's just, see this, the arrows on both sides, taking it from both. So then I'll do a little editing. I'm just doing this quickly. I'll do a little editing to that off camera.